It's my great pleasure now to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Zsolt Gabor Hermann, to our virtual space. Dr. Hermann is not only a highly respected orthopedic surgeon from Whanganui, New Zealand, but also a deep thinker whose work bridges the worlds of medicine, philosophy, and human interconnectedness. Throughout his career, he has explored the intricate relationship between the human body, healing, and the broader purpose of life. Today, he will take us on a journey of profound reflection with his talk entitled The Revelation of the Source of Life, Humanity's Ultimate Purpose in Global Integration.
Thank you very much. My name is Zsolt Hermann, and I'm a Hungarian-born orthopedic surgeon living in New Zealand. I will share you my presentation. All right, I hope you can see it on the screen. So I'm very happy to be here. I really appreciate your invitation, and it's a great privilege. This is the first time I attend such a conference, and I can see the huge importance, especially when we are looking at the events unfolding in the world. During the next 2 days, from many different professionals, we will hear about global integration, why it is so important, and what we can do to educate people more about it. So instead of talking about the details, I would like to invite you to imagine that everything that happens to us is not random, not accidental, but try to imagine that we are in a theater, in a movie, which is very well designed and conducted, and everything that we experience is purposeful, and it has to happen. So we just have to understand what is happening to us. So through that scope, I would like to examine the global integration, why it is so difficult for humanity to achieve this global integration, and how we can help each other to move on. So especially in this plenum, I don't think I have to give any further proof that we live in an interconnected world. And despite that, and despite everybody's talking about global village, we see more and more conflicts. There are still large-scale wars in the world, and many people are even afraid that there might be a third world war because people still can't agree even on the smallest things. And especially if we look at economy and trade, we can see possibly a huge conflict or a global crisis unfolding in the forthcoming days. So why is it that on one hand, we all know that we are interconnected, we already experienced that we have to connect together to succeed. When it comes to crunch time, we all choose separation. Many people would look at politicians and blame certain people in the world, or think that it is to do with culture or nationality or politics. But since we are constantly focusing on these things, we are missing the key, which is based in human nature. So this is what we really need to examine, how human nature contributes to these conflicts and what is unfolding in the world. The forthcoming few slides are just describing how global integration can be observed through social interdependence, cultural interdependence, technological interdependence. We can see how we can connect right now. I'm from New Zealand, you are from Europe and Israel. We are talking to each other as if we were in the same room. These days with the AI, we can just ask a question and receive a beautiful answer within seconds. So we are almost like living in a matrix which we created for ourselves in a good way. When it comes to economic interdependence, I think we are looking at a very sharp test at the moment in the world due to certain movements and the new laws introduced. We will see in the forthcoming days how many countries will try to protect themselves and try to prove that they can succeed at the expense of others. And at the same time, it's very likely that it will also cause a global crisis, a global financial crisis or economic crisis. So we are reaching a point where masses of people will understand that although we would like to serve ourselves, we would like to succeed independently, we will realize that we simply cannot exist without each other. And I think during the 2 days, we will hear more and more proof about it, how humanity is interconnected and we simply cannot survive without each other. When we come to the system of nature, this is the only place where we can examine the positive proofs, the design, how an interconnected system should work. Through my profession, of course, I can observe it in the biological body. But when we look at nature in general, we see many examples. Unfortunately, that is also distorted when we look at Disney movies and we hear all kinds of children's tales. We get a very skewed picture of the world. So we can't really see how much each element in nature is contributing to a single system which is alive and which can nurture life, exactly because each element is contributing and working together. When we look at Disney movies, we look at good animals and bad animals. So we can't see that when a predator is chasing a prey, both of them are fulfilling their role in the system, and both role is absolutely necessary. There are unique empirical scientist who has been describing the whole of reality as a system that is permeated by a single force, a single quality, which is the quality of love and bestowal. So when we observe this and we try to examine what this love means, we can look at how elements of nature completely serve the system without even thinking themselves. If you look at our bodies, we can see how our cells and organs each do exactly what they need to do for the system to survive and most optimally exist. And none of them is thinking about themselves. All the calculations are made only for the whole system. So when we examine what is true love, I think we have to redefine what we thought about this notion. True love is really feeling the others, feeling the system, and doing everything most perfectly so the system can survive and exist. So when we look at nature, we can find multiple examples of it. But when we look at humanity, we start to see a very different picture because we each feel ourselves independently, separately, and knowingly or unknowingly, we all use the system for our own sake. And many times we do that at the expense of others. So again, we could blame ourselves or blame others why they are egotistic, why they are selfish. This is very important to examine that we are in a purposeful system, and even our separation and this egotistic nature has its very important role, which can lead us to a much higher level collective existence, as long as we finally recognize that our separation is built in us. So we cannot blame politicians, we cannot blame other people or certain systems. We all have to look into ourselves and find the root cause of this separation and the conflicts in ourselves. So this is where the truly human development can start, when we start to understand that this unique human ego, which is in all of us, which separated us from integrality and separated us from nature, is something which was built into us. So it's not our fault. We are not guilty about it, but we have to recognize that there is something in us which simply does not allow us to connect to others, which simply does not allow us to work together, even when we already tasted, for example, in the global economy, how successful it is when we cooperate and everybody is trying to fulfill their role in the system. Now we choose separation, and again, we try protectionism, we try to punish others with taxes and different kind of measures. So we will realize that this cannot go on because we will not be able to survive this way. So this is a very important point, that we all have to recognize that there is something in us which needs changing, and it is also that it is purposeful, that there is an evolutionary process which caused this separation, because the evolution put in us this egotistic nature, and evolution also forces us to recognize this ego and correct it. So this is the process which is now more and more unfolding in humanity as more and more people start to recognize what's happening. So humanity is very unique in the system because we have consciousness, we have awareness of our situation, we can examine ourselves in a critical examination, and we can even induce changes how we behave, which animals or plants or the inanimate objects cannot do. So we really have to use this unique human ability. And this is where, as Professor Ephraim already mentioned, education is very important. And we will hear a lot about education later on in the conference, because we really have to make people aware that if we truly want to solve our problems, we cannot just change parties, we cannot just move to another country, but we have to change how we behave ourselves, how we behave, how we relate to each other. And this requires a completely new kind of education and a new kind of process. So we have to take example from nature's system and look at how nature is integrated and try to somehow employ it in human interconnection in the human system. Of course, this is not going to be easy, since we have to do it against our own nature, and this is where the difficulty lies. And this is where our new education or new approach has to be so unique, which allows us, on one hand, to recognize that there is something in us which is against unity, at the same time use special tools and even draw forces from nature, so we can rise above our own nature, or even utilize our egotistic nature, but in a positive way, to help our integration. So this is going to be a new shift. This is going to be a new revolutionary human development, when we shift from this ego-driven individualistic existence to the collective existence. So hopefully conferences like this and all the research which is going on from the specialists in this conference can contribute to this, that it will become mainstream, and more people will listen to it and understand it and take part in it. So the first step in this process is to recognize how the ego is working in us, that whether we are aware of it or not, we all try to grab everything, and most of the time we try to do it at the expense of others. Again, I think we don't need any more proofs than what we see in the world right now. And the problem is that because we are not compatible with the natural system based on our inherent nature, we don't even know what our necessities are. So when we think we are fulfilling our necessities, usually we are just over-consuming and taking everything for ourselves. And this is what's leading to all kinds of conflicts and wars and separation in a closed system. So the recognition of this egotistic nature in us, especially helping people to recognize it in a safe way, in a protected environment where it is not happening in a harsh, negative way, but we see that it is something purposeful we can use. That's very important, and that probably needs to be part of the new educational system. And when we already recognize the egotistic nature in us, then we can use special methods and special practices to rise above this ego or separate from it, and try to build nature-like mutual integration in humanity, which can lead us to a completely new existence and a new perception of reality. And this is where we arrive to the whole purpose of this process, because obviously we can see that we need mutual integration. We have to base everything on global integration in order to survive. in order to secure our health, the economy, the safety for our families and for our nations and for the whole world. But just focusing on these physical targets is not enough. That's not what evolution is expecting from us. What we start to understand from different sciences and what very unique empirical scientists have been telling us for millennia, that there is a single force, a single quality which is permeating our system, and everything is based on this single force and its deterministic plan. Even physicists or scientists are trying to find a single formula or a model which can explain everything, that everything is interconnected. So consciously or subconsciously, we all feel that there has to be a single all-encompassing law or system of laws in reality, which is originating from a single source. So when we are talking about the purpose of human integration, apart from securing our life, of course, and preventing wars, we have to aim a little bit higher, and we have to understand that our integration at the end will lead us to recognize this single force and live not just with each other in harmony, but live in partnership with this single force. And that requires a very unique integration and oneness of humanity or human perception. So in order to reach this, in order to recognize this single force, which is characterized by this natural love, this absolute love, when I don't exist, but I exist only to serve the others or serve the whole system, we have to build a new human society which is based on mutual guarantee, where each person commits and practices to live only for the sake of the others. Of course, it's not going to happen from one day to the next, and it's not going to happen in the whole humanity all at once. That's why we have to start practicing it in smaller groups, in smaller environments, through a special method with people who are already willing and ready to do this, because they are more sensitive and they feel the necessity of this. Of course, it cannot be forced on people. We already saw the communistic example and experiment a few decades ago. So it has to be, as already mentioned, through special education, special preparation, so people can understand why they have to do it, and they don't just yield to it, but they actually want to do it. They are looking forward to it, and they are aspiring for it positively. And this is how this new state, through mutual guarantee, through mutual integration, can unfold. And then it has very special consequences, because it's not only the physical systems which can work, but we can also build a completely new perception of reality when we start to perceive reality through each other. And instead of this very flat world, which is based on the axis of time, space, and movement, we will start to perceive reality which is beyond these subjective boundaries. And we can't even imagine what kind of existence we can achieve when we truly connect to each other and start to build this collective consciousness and, let's say, composite perception, when we add to each other and we start to perceive reality through each other. So this collective consciousness, this singularity, we could call it, what we can prepare, that will enable us to sense that unique force, that unique quality which is permeating the whole system, where everything is originating from. So this is just, I wanted to provoke some thoughts, and I wanted to invite you to imagine this beyond all the physical problems and the problems humanity is exploring today. That although, of course, we have to solve our problems and we have to prevent further problems, there is a much higher goal, a much higher purpose, and an opportunity before us, what we can achieve through mutual human integration. At the end, I think this is what we will achieve with the help of such conferences and by working together and helping each other. So, I mean, that was mainly what I wanted to tell you, and we have a few minutes for questions if you have a few questions.
Thank you so much. Let's see if we have some questions.
Yes, there's one question in YouTube. It says, how can we change from being focused on ourselves to caring more about others?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think as we discussed and we will hear in few of the lectures today, we need a proper education program, a proper information changing program. Although mentally most people understand that we live in a global world, we don't feel it. So what we have to do is to create such environments and such programs where we can give each other emotional impressions, that we can make a very sharp distinction between being on ourselves and focusing on ourselves and experiencing all the problems what we go through today, and what elevated states we can experience when we are together. Even today, we have such experiences when we attend music conferences or sport events, when people are in the same atmosphere and trying to support each other or do something together. But we can elevate it even more higher when we also understand that by uniting, by integrating, we can reach some much higher, qualitatively much higher goals. So it has to be education and collective mutual practices we can do together. And the next question from YouTube: what does it mean to live in harmony with nature? We have to become similar to nature, first of all, in order to be in harmony with nature. So at the moment, we are not compatible. Even, I mean, it's a scientific conference, so maybe it's not the best place to say it, but even if you look at our sciences, we are looking into something which we don't understand, because we are not inside the system, we are outside of the system. So if you look at most of the current sciences, they are theoretical, they are guessing, although very accurate guesses, and fortunately we are still progressing technologically, but still we are not compatible with the system we live in. So harmony means that we have to take on ourselves the qualities of the system, and as we mentioned before, it is this natural love when the parts of the system exist for each other, not for themselves. So we will only understand nature and only live in harmony with it when we don't try to change it to fit our expectations, selfish expectations, but we change ourselves, how we can understand nature, how we can take on its laws and build a natural kind of integration. We can even say that individually we will never be in harmony with nature. Individually, we will never understand nature. We will only understand it collectively when we become an integral collective which partners nature. Thank you.
I had a question. What is some of the most important scientific work, in your opinion, that approaches this idea in some way?
I think it's all sciences, because all sciences are exploring nature. We all try to make sense of what's happening. I'm not a physicist, but I read about it a little bit, about the standard model, how they try to establish one system of laws which can describe everything. Obviously, in medicine, we try to create health and try to prevent diseases. And now we start to understand that apart from the physical part of it, the actual emotional side of healing and existence is much more important, because everything is influenced by how we relate to each other. So I think most of the sciences which are looking at the integrality and the integral connections are contributing to it. So I don't think it's just one science. All sciences are basically existing only for that, even if we don't know yet. But our whole purpose is to find out this integrality and how we can contribute to it.
Thank you so much. We have a question from the chat from Zarima. What do you see as the first practical steps to reach this level of community development?
Thank you. I mean, the first step is an unpleasant one, because first of all, we have to understand why we are in conflict. And this is where most of us would react, looking at others, blaming others. And when we look at the media, we look at the world of politics, it's very obvious. But it is very difficult to recognize that the problem is also in me. It is not just others who are selfish or egotistic, but I also have this nature in me. We are all born with the same nature. So it's like when we suspect that we are ill, and we don't even go to the doctor, or we are afraid of the diagnosis. But in order to get the right treatment, first we have to have the right diagnosis. So and sometimes we call it the revelation of evil, which sounds bad, and maybe the word is not the best, but at first we have to recognize that I have to change. If I already recognize that I have to change, and I have to contribute to others, that they can also change, and that should be the first step.
Thank you so much. We have another question from YouTube. This is from Ilona. Why do people still have conflicts, even though the world is more connected than ever?
Yes, as I said, I mean, if you look at the news today, this is the most obvious, that we understand we cannot live without each other, and still we choose to go against each other. And that again is coming from our inherent nature. And this is why it's so important that in safe and protected environments, we look into a mirror sort of and start to recognize that this is in me. It's not just the others, but unless we change our nature, we change our approach to each other, we will never be able to solve the conflicts, and it will just get worse and worse, because we are in a downward spiral now, which can lead into a world war, unless people start to recognize that we just cannot go on instinctively and repeating the same mistakes, the same habitual reactions that we have been doing for whole history. And now our weapons are much more destructive, and now we can even destroy each other with a button, disconnecting each other from whatever services we are using. So again, we just have to recognize that the problem is in us, and we have to have the willingness to change. And fortunately, as we learn or we hear from different sciences, it doesn't have to be 8 billion people to make this change immediately. If we have a so-called critical minority, a unique group of people who start this process, then that can spread in a world which is getting more and more desperate anyway. So if a small group can show some hope, some positive example, that can immediately initiate huge changes.
Okay, I think we have time for one more quick question from Zutsu. People don't like change, and they especially don't want to change themselves. How can we help them accept change?
Yes, it's difficult, but if you look at the world, we are changing every day, and unfortunately, the changes are forced on us, whether we want it or not. So we are in a process which is unfolding, and if we don't make conscious steps to change ourselves, we will be changed by suffering, unfortunately. So this is what we have to recognize, that we then don't have a choice. We have to change. The question is, we will be changed because it's forced on us, or we go ahead of the changes and we start changing ourselves before we are forced to change. This is our only free choice, to understand what we have to do and do it before it is forced on us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hermann. This has been a wonderful talk, wonderful way to begin our conference, and you get to so many important and fundamental ideas. So we are very grateful.